Hi, welcome to the Gracie Gatto podcast. I'm Gracie Gatto, and today we have Chris Belch.
Ball.
Balch! How could I fuck that up?
You're not the first, Gracie.
Chris Balch. Chris Balch. I'm gonna tattoo that on my forehead. Chris
Oh,
Balch.
that's funny. That's
Oh,
good.
oh gosh.
We
Well,
can
thank
leave that. You can leave that in, That's really awesome.
oh, it's a great exercise. This is what I was trying to do off camera. I'm sure your name has come up in several activist circles. I've seen you write op-eds. I've seen you with signs against the ICE facilities. I mean, you're a badass. So tell me about yourself. Does everybody keep talking about?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always nice to just have an opportunity to share thoughts with a wider audience and hopefully get people involved who may be sitting on the sidelines. Um, so we're in a crisis. And I don't really consider myself a badass as much as I consider myself having been radicalized by what's going on in the world. Um, I was a climate activist. Well, back before I was a climate activist, I was a science teacher, and I taught chemistry, physics, and biology. And I really always appreciated the fact that I had a background in all three of them because I could understand the biological processes from a chemical perspective and also from a physical perspective, and vice versa. And, it just all overlapped and made sort of a seamless picture. And that led into real understanding of what was going on with the climate. And the climate became sort of my number one priority for several years,
Mhm.
actually almost 10 years. And then from there, the situation in Gaza erupted.
Mhm.
And it has distracted me and distracted many from what's going on with climate. I always say, meanwhile, climate continues to go straight to hell.
Yeah.
Um, and then on top of the situation in Gaza, now we have a war with Iran going on. And the question that we always have to ask ourselves is, how the hell did we get here? How did we get here from a peaceful, like I, when I was a kid in the 1950s, everybody was brothers and sisters, and everybody was happy that we were at peace, and that's what we wanted. And now it's just the opposite, and you have to ask yourselves, how the hell did we get here?
So you ran or you were a state rep for 2 years.
I was a state rep, yes, and wasn't an experience that I actually really enjoyed very much. I was always an outdoor person and an outdoor leader, and
Mhm.
so going back into the cement block building after retiring from cement block buildings was not really fun. And going into just endless meetings.
But you have an insight that a lot of people don't as a former lawmaker and now activist. So do you feel like you're making more of a difference as an activist versus someone who's working on behalf of the people, an elected official?
Well, boy, that's a really good question. I wish I felt like I was making more of a difference, at all.
Yeah.
If there was something I could measure by and say, this was good. I guess the only thing I can really point to as a clear victory, a really clear victory, was the attempt several years ago to build an asphalt plant here in Wilton. And they tried to build it like right next to the town swim park. So the swim park all summer long was going to stink like asphalt, and the water was going to be impacted, the air quality was going to go down. And at first, nobody seemed to care. And I like put it up on Facebook on the town website and said, really? Nobody cares about this? And people started to wake up. And we ended up having a really very concerted, very united effort to oppose the plant, and we were successful. They ended up not building the plant.
So you were part of the Clamshell Alliance as well, right?
Oh, way back. Yeah. Way
You've been
back. No, no nukes. No nukes.
too bad the pay isn't very well. Otherwise, you would be like a CEO level activist, right?
Yeah, well,
Spirit.
George, I still can't get George Soros to write me a check. Damn it.
I know. It is very interesting times. We're too divided. I saw something on Facebook I mentioned to you offline that we're looking at people putting up Facebook requests on getting a realtor based on their political background. So
Right.
I'm looking for a MAGA real estate agent. Like, uh, what?
Yeah,
Like,
really.
yeah, or looking for a liberal only person to sell my house. I mean, that's where we are, and it's bizarre because these people are not on our side, and you and I are screaming from the rooftops like these people are not our friends. Why are you sticking up for them?
Well, these people aren't really even being friends to themselves or to others,
Yeah.
who they may agree with, because they're undermining our Constitution. They're undermining the rule of law. And even if you don't go by the rule of law, human decency, my God, the things that are happening today that people um, are like pounding the table and saying they're happy about are just hideous things, like children being bombed in schools,
Yeah.
you know. And if it happened here in the United States once, we would go absolutely batshit. We would go batshit. If a foreign nation bombed one of our schools when it was full of kids, we would go crazy. But somehow it's okay for us to do that to them.
It's traumatizing what we're able to get from the media right now.
Yeah,
The images of just pure genocide. Let's just call it what it is, a genocide.
yeah,
And
it
people,
is.
and 3 years ago, I remember, or 4 years ago, I remember looking at these pictures and feeling like I couldn't even process them. They were so horrid. And now I feel like I'm being desensitized. Now when I see pictures, I feel like, and I don't, and I feel like America as a whole has been trained to be desensitized by such images.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's true. I think, it was all part of the plan that if you push people's sensitivities to the side, they become desensitized, and then you can take the next step further, do something even more horrendous and hideous.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I I
So
I, I think this genocide is the worst we've seen since the Holocaust.
I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. And what's going to happen in Iran?
I don't
I
know.
think Donald Trump is really optimistic, thinking that this is just going to be a cleanup, mop-up operation, and that the people of Iran are going to support what's going on with America doing this. They're not. You don't you don't drop bombs on people's heads and then have them cheer you. That just doesn't happen.
It's bizarre that I've seen, the language that they use for PR, like the Riviera of the Middle East. Well, like they're trying to sell land that is still being bombed and cleared out.
Yeah,
Um,
land that doesn't
from
belong to
properties. It sort of reminds me of the movie Poltergeist. When they build these middle class family homes on top of a graveyard
Yeah, that's right.
in this movement. Um, it's just too convenient to call anyone who questions Zionism or questions um, how the Israeli government works, and you're branded an anti-Semite.
Yep, automatically. Yeah, you must
And,
be.
well, if I had
And
a nickel for
yeah, well, that's
know.
right. Well, when we were at so I was with the Party for Socialism and Liberation in Manchester the other day, doing sort of a knee-jerk reaction to Iran war protest. So it was Saturday afternoon, the day that the war started.
Mhm.
And we were out there with signs, and there were people coming up to, I could not believe how many angry people were coming up to us and cursing us out and threatening to hurt us and things like that, and calling us anti-Semites. And I tried to explain to them, no, we're not anti-Semitic, we're anti-war. We're
Well,
just anti-war.
there's the other argument that dropping bombs on Semitic people is an act of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, well, yes, there is that. I mean, I would agree. I would say
So
that's
whenever,
pretty anti-Semitic. So,
just to go
but a
on the
protest,
record,
yeah,
we
but
don't hate the Jewish religion. We are criticizing the Zionist movement. End of story. Anybody who tries to convolute that to what it isn't is is
is
swallowing
wrong, is wrong. We are not
Clorox
anti-Jewish.
talking points.
I am not anti-Jewish. I am absolutely not anti-Jewish. I am not anti-Semitic in the way that they sort of frame it as
Mhm.
meaning. Um, I am really just pro-life, pro-peace, prosperity,
Humanity.
you know, pro-community, pro people being able to get along and do things. And, I think about I constantly think about my childhood still, and the fact that I grew up in the 1950s and 1960s, and I still, whenever I drive, like the Merritt Parkway down in Connecticut, and you
Mhm.
go through those bridges, and the bridges are just these beautiful carved stone bridges. And
Huh.
it's like they could have just put up a bridge,
Yeah.
but instead they put up a beautiful bridge. They took the time and the effort to make it something special. And the reason they did that is because they had an aesthetic appreciation for art and for beauty. And it added to the bridge and made it more than just a bridge, you know. And now when they tear those down because they're getting old and they're breaking, they put up a shitty little bridge that just looks like every other shitty little bridge. And it's a statement on our culture. It's really a statement of how we have moved away from the humanities to just sort of be slaves to capitalism.
What you say to the your adversaries, the people who would call you a name for thinking.
A libtard,
There you
yeah,
go.
things
What
like
would the
that.
Free
Yeah.
Staters call you?
Free staters aren't really fond of me. But nobody really cares that much. They first of all, whenever I post anything, they call me an old fool. And the fact that they may be right about that's not something I would entirely rule out. But
Wouldn't
um,
Charlie Kirk say to respect your elders? You know,
yeah, but that was Charlie Kirk, and so
I mean, that's who they worship, right? So it's
yeah,
like, lead by example. But they are a bunch of frat boys. They're, the New Hampshire government state, I mean, the state house is one big high school.
yeah.
You got the
Oh my
jocks, you
gosh.
got the cheerleaders, you got,
So when I was in the state house, there was a state representative from Wilton, another state rep from Wilton named Kermit Williams. And his first name really is Kermit. And whenever he would get up to speak, the some of the Republicans would be going, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. They were like literally that childish, that they would have to make frog sounds. They were that childish. And I
and
was
these are
just
the
like,
people who write your laws, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. And what was astounding to me is like we're 400 people here in the state House of Representatives, and we all have voices, and we're supposed to be listening to each other and crafting the best laws we can for the people. And
Yeah.
instead, they're making fun of somebody, because that's more fun than trying to actually do good work. So, and that's really the state of mind of what's going on a lot. They're just childish. They're children. They're just children.
What do you say to the Democratic Party?
Well, the Democrats are just as bad. In the New Hampshire State House, I would actually say we have a pretty good representation of some really good reps. I look at people like Ellen Reed, who went on the flotilla, and Wendy Thomas, who has
He's a bat.
spoken out really vocally and effectively against the ice in Merrimack.
Yeah.
And then David Muse, who continues to push for and try to sponsor and try to get past just, I hate to use these words, but sensible gun legislation. But it's gun legislation that is based in safety without really impinging or harming the Second Amendment rights. And I'm all for that. I don't see why we can't be listened to or why those people aren't listened to better than they are. So we have some very good reps
Mhm.
actually in the New Hampshire State House who are Democrats. And I can't really say that about the Republicans. There are very few of them that I would point to and say they're doing a good job. I think they're mostly just doing cahoots with each other and linking arms and marching forward with their agenda, regardless of whether it's right, wrong, or representative of the people.
No, I've met, you know, I've had my share of disagreements with the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
but I during
Well,
my
when
research,
you get to the federal Dems, then I have a very different opinion. I just was looking at Chris Pappas's AIPAC tracker, and it's up to $2.7 million. Okay, so it jumped up from $811,000 to 2.7 million in less than a year.
right?
And so coincidentally, he's running for the Senate. So where did all that money come from? It came from Israel to sponsor him for the Senate, his Senate campaign. So they're essentially funding his Senate campaign so that he can get elected and then represent Israel. And that's what he'll do. He'll continue to vote to send money to Israel, money and arms to Israel so that they can continue to bomb Gaza and expand the war with Iran or attack Lebanon or do anything else they feel like doing.
Yeah.
And then Maggie Hassan has taken, last time I checked, it was about $640,000. And, again, from AIPAC. And again, her votes have been very consistently pro-Israel. And Goodlander is young and new to the game, so she's only taken like 120,000 or something, or maybe even not that much, but considerably less than the others.
We need to
Um,
publicly shame these people.
well,
And
that's what we do. So we have a weekly action that we go to the Puritan back room, which is owned by the Pappas family in Manchester. It's out on Hooksett Road, people, in case you want to know.
yes, please say
And
hi to Chris.
and we
He's
go
the
out
cold
there
guy.
with a big banner that says that Hassan and Pappas are war criminals,
Mhm.
and we are not popular with the management at the Puritan back room. They have come out a couple of times and sort of read us the riot act. They've called the cops. One time we had four people at a little protest there, and we had five cop cars.
God,
We,
there's so like you're anti-war,
yeah, no,
anti-violence,
and
pacifism.
the
You're
cops
not going
were
to hurt
actually
anybody.
The cops were actually very nice and said that they were there in part to protect us from counter protesters or people that might not like us being there. Um, they were very nice, and then most of them drove off and left us there with just one or two. So, but it's just amazing how if you really just try to stand up for peace, you just try to stand up for sanity, you just try to stand up for just basic human goodness, somehow you become on the wrong side of our current society. Our society has
That's
embraced a
interesting.
culture of death, consumption and death.
That
You
is
know,
absolutely spot on because like every time someone would come out anti-war, like you have your Malcolm X, you have your MLKs, you have freaking John Lennon, you get shot down and you become something that they something dangerous when you talk anti-war.
well, you're talking anti-establishment. You're talking anti the oligarchs,
Yeah.
the big arms manufacturers who are cleaning up, becoming ever richer. And you're talking against those kinds of things, and they don't like that. They don't like that. So they always accuse protesters of getting paid, saying George Soros is funding us all. But it's just very disturbing. And so one of the things. So anyway, to back up a little bit. Climate activist became a Gaza activist, an anti-genocide protester who is now focusing also on what's going on with Iran. And at the same time, I was saying to my wife Paula this morning, what's going to happen? It's like all of these things feel somewhat futile to me to be protesting because climate really does continue to go straight to hell. And climate is the entire human race and more. It's like millions of other species are hanging in the balance and we're doing nothing about it. As a matter of fact, all of these wars, all these munitions, the rebuilding that has to happen afterwards adds hugely to the carbon footprint that we're creating. So we're accelerating it rather than trying to deal with it. And again, I tie all of this to the culture of death that we have created for ourselves. And Democrats on the federal level, Republicans on the federal level, Republicans even in the New Hampshire State House are
Mm,
all culpable. They're all culpable because they're all going along with it.
I agree. All right, Chris, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time and our coffee break.
Thank, well, thank you. Great. Look at that, how it disappears. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Psychedelic coffee. Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, Gracie, thank you so much for having me on and much appreciated.
You have a good one.
Okay, you as well.